Out of all of the characters introduced into the RWBY series, upon arriving at Atlas, the one I was most anticipating was Willow Schnee. Unfortunately, events played out in Volume 7 in such a way that Willow only appeared on screen in 2 episodes, Episode 8 and Episode 9, with her only having a speaking role in Episode 8, the conversation she had with Weiss. And although brief, it still gave us a fair bit of insight into Willow's character, that she deeply cares about her children. She's sad to see Weiss go, but happy that she's no longer going to be under Jacques' influence, and cares about her other children too, in the fact that she wants Weiss to take Whitley with her so that he can get away as well. And although Willow doesn't actually have the strength emotionally or possibly physically to stand up to Jacques and stop his wrongdoings and nefarious dealings with the Schnee Dust Company that he stole from her family, she is willing to take some measures so that she can prevent the worst case scenario. Put up cameras in his office to record his nefarious dealings so that if he ever does anything against their children, she can have a way to get him away from them. Essentially get him arrested, possibly her as well, considering she knows about this, but get the children out of that influence. Now, we do get a little bit more about Willow Schnee in the RWBY comics, the DC comic issue number 9, that released just a short while after Willow's introduction into the RWBY series, which gives us a brand new side to Willow Schnee and paints a very different picture of her character, at least in my opinion. Now, these comics are considered canon, so it's interesting how there's such a difference in her character. Now, this comic starts off with Weiss reading the book that she won from Ozpin in the challenge that took place in a previous volume of the comics. It seems like this book is going to have a role to play in the future narratives of this comic, as it seems to focus on glyphs, and Weiss is having some trouble with it. It seems to be in a code that she just can't break at this moment, so she goes for a little stroll around the mansion. And so, who else calls her over but Willow Schnee, her mother? Weiss is a bit shocked that, or surprised at least, that she's called into Willow's garden, as it seems no one's really allowed in. And Willow's response to this was, "Well, of course, dear. Your father and sister are away on business. Who else would I invite in? Whitley?" Implying that she wouldn't invite Whitley in. And so they start having a little conversation as Weiss is curious about where are Father and Winter. Well, they're away on business. They have such important business that they're doing. Oh, I've never been able to keep up with them, Willow is saying. And that Jacques is away dealing with some of the faunus workers in the mines. Willow would only be a burden if she went along with him. And Weiss goes on to say that, I know I hurt you when I chose Beacon over Atlas Academy. Weiss was leaving home for the first time. It makes sense that that would hurt Willow. And it did, as we saw in the RWBY series in Episode 8. And that Weiss has never been able to make her mother proud. But Willow responds to this by saying that out of everyone in the family, she was the one who believed in Weiss. Jacques thought he got the heir he wanted in Winter, and the son he always wanted in Whitley. But Willow fought for Weiss, implying that maybe she didn't fight for her other children, even though in the RWBY series we know that she does care deeply about her children. And also, one thing that was mentioned a bit earlier is that Willow exclaimed that she was happy Weiss was done with all the tears and wailing. Oh, that never works. I'm a living example of that, implying that Willow's objections to Jacques' nefarious dealings did nothing, so you may as well stop it and just accept it and move on. That's not really something you should be saying to your daughter. But Willow suggests going on, a mother-daughter activity. She wants a new pet for her garden, for her menagerie, as she calls it. The pets in her garden are all behind cages, and we know that in previous comics it has been shown that the faunus workers, some of the faunus workers, are kept in cages from the Schnee Dust Company mine that Blake and Adam went to rescue them from. So the fact that Willow is referring to her animals as her menagerie is, that carries along with it some heavy connotations that are just not really that good. But Weiss, wanting to make her mother proud, does go off and go along with her mother on a hunt for the Hailstone Hind. And Weiss, or I should say Willow, is just drinking the entire time and not really doing anything. So Weiss is responsible for the entire capture of it. And so she does, as she does use her glyphs to, ensnare it, and she's about to put the collar on it, Willow says, "Make me proud," which encourages Weiss to actually capture the animal. And so Willow decides, great, another thing of the Schnee's accomplishments. We should hold a gala. Jacques never lets me keep a new pet if we don't, parade it out for the public to see. And so they do. Willow hosts a gala. The Hailstone Hind is chained up on stage, and Willow is exclaiming that this is the Schnee's new conquest, the new addition or prize that they have. And everyone in the room is praising the great summoner of Willow Schnee, which of course upsets Weiss, as Willow just took all the credit for Weiss's hard work. Willow didn't say anything about being proud of Weiss, and Weiss is getting angry, saying that, don't give me any of that, don't say you didn't mean it. It's always been the alcohol and the pets and the self-medication that you've cared about. It's never been me. Don't make me disposable again. And so Willow's response to this is to say, well, fine, if this is what you want, just know it means nothing. So she goes back out on stage, gives her necklace to Weiss, and says, I'm sorry everyone, correction. This is who won the Schnee's victory, who won the Hailstone Hind, my true daughter, Weiss Schnee. And then this causes Weiss to have some reflections on this, relating the situation that she was just in with her mother back to the situation that she had with Carden. That, it wasn't her fault. If he was going to be made a fool of, going to be humiliated, it was his own fault. It wasn't hers. It's not like she wanted that to happen, etc. And she can see the parallels that Blake was pointing out to Weiss about how she acted to Carden, and she sees that in how her mother acted to her. Her mother's own true daughter, indeed. And this pushes Weiss to want to break free again, which is a similar theme that Weiss's story is following throughout these comics. In volume 4 or 5, I believe it was number 5, when it went over the little match or challenge that Ozpin put out for Weiss and the rest of the students, Weiss wanted to break away from those preconceived notions that people had of her. Being associated with the Schnee name, she wanted to become her own person. And now she wants to break away from her family as well, carve her own path, which has been a theme throughout Volume 7 as well, something that her and Winter are both having to do. And so she goes to break out the one pet that she did capture for her mother and set it free, saying, look at me now, that she is breaking away from her mother, and that maybe what her mother thinks of her doesn't exactly matter that much at this point. She's not going to be constantly vying to make her mother proud. And this is where the comic ends, and frankly, I'm very positive about the RWBY comics. I've loved the comics up until this point, but this one seems off. The rest of them, I could see them happening in the RWBY series, that it was expanding on events that took place, especially the ones with Team Ranger, and when they encountered the village, that people were afraid of the huntsman from Beacon Academy after seeing what was broadcast to the world. That made a lot of sense, but this seems to actually starkly contrast what we've seen of Willow's character. It seems that she doesn't care that much about her daughters in this instance, that she wants Weiss to make her proud by doing what she wants. It seems like she's actually a bit supportive of Jacques, like, oh, I would just be a burden there helping him, but letting him take all of the important business and all of that, it doesn't sit right with me that Willow acted this way. Now, I think this may partly be due to the fact that Willow had not been introduced into the series yet, and so the writers of the comic had nothing really to go off of other than the notes that Carrie and Miles may have given them, which may have been just a couple footnotes, that she is, the heiress to the Schnee Dust Company. Her husband took it from her. She drinks alone, secluded in her garden. She had a summoning semblance at one point, etc. All these little points were touched on, but they seem kind of I don't know, disconnected from what we saw in the RWBY series itself. And then maybe this comic was drawn up and everything and it was too late to change anything. As of right now, this is canon, so this is Willow Schnee's character on top of what we saw in the RWBY series, but it seems to contrast so much that she cares a lot in the RWBY series. And of course, I'm taking the show over the comics itself, but I don't know. Let me know what you guys think. Willow cares about Weiss and Whitley in the show, but here it doesn't seem like she does as much. Not to mention, she's also hosting these grand galas when she's supposedly supposed to be this secluded person, not going out in public anymore and just drinking alone in her garden, staying to herself, recluding from not only the public but her family as well. It seems like there's quite a few stark contrasts. So let me know what you guys think down in the comments below. Do you think this speaks well to Willow's character? Do you think this is accurate to how you think she would act, etc.? Let me know in the comments below. I'm really curious to hear what you guys think. I'm still a fan of the RWBY comics. This one I'm considering, maybe not canon. At least I'm hoping it's not, because I really liked Willow's character when she showed up. There's still a lot more development that we can hopefully have in Volume 8 when we see her more, hopefully. And yeah, let me know what you guys think. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed, learned a little bit more, and have some opinions that you'll share below in the comments. But with that being said, I'll see you guys in the next one.